you know what? I'm going to take care of mom and dad on these days, but I need a vacation. So we're going to either look at respite care or we're going to hire somebody. This is not a quality of life. And I didn't want this to happen for my own parents, but I didn't really think a lot about it. What if things get worse? What if I burn out, or I get sick? What happens if I get sick? Who's going to step in for me? It's the same as orange and fruit. Dementia is fruit. Alzheimer's is the orange. Nobody has to do this alone. There's so much support out there.
This is the Buried in Work podcast, where we share tips and interview experts to help you simplify estate planning and end-of-life tasks.
Welcome to the Buried in Work podcast, where we feature tips and stories from industry professionals who specialize in making estate planning, end-of-life tasks, and estate transitions more manageable. I'm your host, Adam Zuckerman, and today we have a very special guest with us, Janice Goldmintz. Janice is an expert in gerontology with a passion for helping adult children navigate the complex world of aging parents. With a master's degree in gerontology and a personal experience caring for her own parents, Janice has developed comprehensive plans for high-quality care. She also holds a certification as a trainer with Jack Canfield, focusing on how mindset and goal setting can enhance life. Her mission aligns unbelievably well with Buried in Work, as she aims to support families in creating the best possible quality of life for their aging loved ones. Sounds like we've got a great mix of missions here. Janice, welcome.
Thank you so much, Adam. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so let's start off your background. How did you get to where you are today? If you can share a little bit about your personal journey and how it led you to specialize in gerontology and caregiving for aging parents.
Sure. So it really started when my mother's mother was in what used to be called a nursing home. We don't generally call them that there. And I remember I was probably about 13 or 14. And I remember going in there, seeing all these people in wheelchairs lined up in front of a nurse's desk with not much happening and thinking, this is not a quality of life. And I didn't want this to happen for my own parents, but I didn't really think a lot about it in my life after that. I had actually gone to school to take a business course and was in finance and ended up working with a geriatrician who was doing health fairs. And I was helping him to market his health fairs and reach out to the public. And I just became fascinated with what he did and the way he treated his patients and the value that he brought to them. And I ended up going back to school quite late in life to get this degree in gerontology. And it has served me very well. Both of my parents ended up with dementia at different times, Alzheimer's at different times. And even with a background, there are so many things that I wish I could have redone because I didn't, know exactly how to do it from a personal view. It's very different academically than when you are sitting in front of a healthcare provider or somebody who is there from a retirement residence trying to put a care plan together. And you're emotionally involved in it and trying to make sense of your parents and your siblings and other family members all weighing in. So I have had what I would say is probably the best of both worlds. I have the academic background and I have lived experience.
Mm-hmm. And certainly having that mix of both together certainly puts you in a very unique and advantageous position to help others. For those that aren't familiar with gerontology, what is that degree? What does that process look like, and what's the subject matter?
So people sort of mix it up with geriatrics. Like, I am not a physician. That's a geriatrician. Somebody who has studied gerontology, it's the study of aging. It's the process of aging, the physical, emotional, how it affects your life, all of those things that are not necessarily medical, but as Dr. Stahl, who is the doctor who I worked for, used to say, you're looking at the dis-eases, not the diseases. You're looking at all the things that come with the challenges of aging that affect your life that are not necessarily the medical things, but the sort of side effects of it.
And for those individuals who pursue a degree or specialization in gerontology, where do they typically apply what they've learned? Is it for a company? Is it an individual sole practitioner? Is it something else altogether?
It can be a number of things. I would say that it can be in care planning. It can be in family counseling. It can be in hospitals as an adjunct to the medical staff when people are looking for discharge planning
Mhm.
or long-term care planning. It could be with a funeral home and dealing with those people to try and figure out, what is the best kind of planning for that. With financial advisors, it can be a whole bunch of different things.
It's a lot. What goes into a traditional care plan? Is it something that you put in place long before it's needed, or do most people find themselves on the fly trying to establish something that they're quite frankly not very familiar with?
If I could have a perfect world, people would start talking about aging when they're in their 70s.
Hmm.
You want to make sure that you have your powers of attorney, your living will, your real will. Somebody knows where your bank accounts are, who your lawyer is, who your accountant is, what you would want for end of life. But we don't talk about those things. It's like, oh, if I say it, things are going to happen and I'm still healthy and everything is good. But that's to me when you should be starting. It's the same like with medical things, and you want to have a baseline. This is your baseline, really. And so these conversations can then be had more easily. If something should happen, you've already got some dialogue happening. You've already got a family dynamic that it's sitting around the table saying, well, what if this would happen? What would
Hmm.
you want? What would you not want? Where would you want to live? Who would you want to care for you? These are things that those conversations would have already been started. In most families, that's not what happens. There is an event, there is a diagnosis or an accident or a death of a spouse, and that's what triggers, what do we do now? And not to say that you can't do a care plan from that, but if you've already got some of these things in place, it makes it a lot easier for everybody.
Hmm.
To me, there's probably 4 areas that people need to look at. You need to look at finance, you need to look at social services, you need to look at medical, and you need to look at your family dynamic. Because I always say there's no one solution that fits everybody. Every family is different and they're going to need something different and their situation is different.
Hmm. How long does it typically take, in your experience, someone to, if they want to be proactive, to get all of the basics to meet those 4 criteria that you just laid out down on paper? And it's not the fully exhaustive, we have everything, but to get that base foundation in place.
Well, if you can give people different parts to pull together, you could do it
Mhm.
fairly quickly. If you have somebody who knows what investments and debts and assets somebody has, that's one aspect. In terms of family dynamic, that just is. You have to sit down at a table and figure out who is willing. The other thing is that not everybody lives in the same place as their parent. So the child that may be closest to the parent may have the most hands-on, but it doesn't mean that the other family members that may not live in the same city can't help out and do things. They certainly
Mhm.
can. Certainly with internet, I mean, it just as much access as anybody else. So I would say if you want to have a proactive plan, you can do it fairly quickly. It seems though when it's an emergency, it takes longer because everybody is scrambling and it feels like it's taking a very long time to do.
That's exactly right. And what we found at Buried in Work is that the last time you want to be learning these tasks and what goes into creating one of these plans is when you absolutely need it. In times of grief and stress, that's not the best opportunity.
No.
When people hop in and it's family members, loved ones, heirs, siblings or children even, to help out in complicated times, where does burnout come into play? Is it something that has to be actively managed? And if so, what are some of those tricks that you can give to people to recognize?
Burnout happens at various stages. If there is a sort of an acute situation, let's say somebody has had a heart attack and you don't know what the outcome is, and everyone's really emotionally fraught, and the caregiving falls on, we'll say, one child. That child has a very high likelihood of burnout
Hmm.
because there is no other support in that beginning. It's not like things were planned for. And if they're working and if they have their own family and their own life, even more so, because there's guilt in it. Oh, I'm not in my job. Oh, I'm not with my parents. I'm not with my kids. I'm not with my spouse. I'm running around with all the balls in the air and they're all falling down. And it's very easy to burn out. Now, to cycle back on that, it really is a whole lot of personal confidence to be able to do it in some ways,
Mhm.
because you have to ask for help. And a lot of times we don't want to do that. You have to see who can help me. I can't do it all. And if it's not within my family, who can I have from outside my family? Can it be, someone from your religious community? Can it be somebody from your friends? Can it be somebody that you hire? But you have to find ways to spread out that degree of caregiving if it becomes overwhelming for you. So it is planning. It's a lot of thinking what else is out there.
And sometimes it's easy to see burnout or those symptoms of it or what might lead to it from the outside. But when you're going through it on your own, the reaction is, I'm just going to lay things on my shoulders. I'm going to take this on. I'm going to do something else. And you don't really realize what's happening. What are some of the signs that people can self-reflect on if they're in the middle of things to go, wait a minute, if this is happening, I really do need to take action now before things spiral out of control?
So I'm going to give you kind of both sides. It can be that you find yourself sleeping a lot because you're just trying to not deal with it, or you are exhausted. And so that side. Then there's the other side where you're not sleeping and you normally do because your mind is racing and racing and racing and you cannot find a peaceful moment to fall asleep. Your eating patterns may change. You may either eat very little or eat a lot. And it depends on you. Everybody is different. You may find that you have a short fuse. If anybody says anything to you that, normally wouldn't tick you off, it just triggers an emotional response. Or you feel like I can't cope. I feel like there's everything on my shoulders and I can't even think of what I'm going to make for dinner because I can't make one more decision at all. So it's the same as any other kind of a stressful situation, but you have an idea of what that cause is when it's something like this. And especially if it's something that's long and drawn out. Having had experience with people with dementia, in the beginning, I can deal with it. Okay, I'll just roll with it. But when it gets further down the road and there's other things that happen, then physical things can happen and other decisions need to be made. That can be sort of a slam of burnout because you've been kind of going down a path and then all of a sudden something happens that you are not prepared for. And it's like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with that.
Yeah. And we have resources for people that are interested on the website about advanced directives and power of attorney. So we won't go into that very much in this episode, but go to the website if you're interested, buriedinwork.com. Lots of resources there. So we have the care plan in place. We understand that the people that are helping with the care plan, the loved ones in the family, they need to be introspective and look out for their own best interest as well, because if things spiral out of control on their end, it complicates the situation for everybody.
Right.
Moving forward, though, how do the individuals that are stepping in to deal with their parents, and let's talk about it from the perspective of sandwich generation. So 15% of individuals in the sandwich generation are now caring for their parents and also themselves or their children.
Right.
How do they decide the best living situation for an aging parent? And what factors should the holistic family consider?
I think one of the things that families need to do, which they don't do enough of, is goal planning. What is the goal that we have, whether it's short-term or long-term? And it's not about we're going to give up our whole lives now for our parents and the rest of everything else is going on the back burner. You have to look at what is the goal of the children of the aging parent? What is the goal of their family and other people? And how can we have what I call the highest quality of life for everybody? It's not just for the parents, not just for the kids, for everybody. So what do we need to do that? Whether it's, okay, you know what? I'm going to take care of mom and dad on these days, but I need a vacation. So we're going to either look at respite care or we're going to hire somebody or we're going to bring somebody in. So it's planning. It's sort of those what ifs. What if things get worse? What if I burn out, or I get sick? What happens if I get sick? Who's going to step in for me? So it is that kind of stepping out of the emotional part and doing almost a mind map of saying, here's all the things that could happen. What would we do? What if I now need to be more involved in my career because I've got something happening there and I need some help?
Mhm.
So it's really having sort of a long-term view and looking at all the different kind of scenarios. And you hope that they don't, some of them don't occur, but they might.
How do you begin those conversations with your parents? We have countless people that come to us and say, listen, I know that my parents have an idea of what they want to have happen, but I'm not comfortable engaging them to have that conversation. And the reality is both sides likely want to, but nobody understands how to begin to have those chats. How do you encourage people and guide people in starting those conversations?
One of the first things that I tell people is at the holiday times, and it happens various times in the year. Start looking around. Look at different things. Look, is where your parents live, is it being maintained? Is everything clean like it normally would be? Is there food in the fridge? Is there too much food in the fridge? Is it going bad? Is mail being opened? Do you see how they are physically doing? I actually have a checklist, a holiday checklist for people so that if they're going to their parents and I don't see them that often, it's just a bunch of things that they can look for to say, yes, no, oh, I know, I don't need to worry, everything's good, or, oh, wow, I see a few red flags here. And those things can open the door. Like if you say you see mail is unopened, it's an opportunity to say, hey,
Mhm.
I see I happen to notice. Is there anything going on? You need some help. And what will happen in the beginning is likely the parents will say, no, 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 everything's good. But anytime you see something, not in a sort of a judgmental way, like, oh, I see your mail's not done, and ask, hey, how are you doing? What's going on? Have you been going out? What have you been doing? Because you're going to hear, if there are people who have in the past been very social and you're not hearing them going out, you hear them being more isolated. That's something to listen for. Anything that's a change from what they would normally do,
Mhm.
those are things that can open a conversation. And even something like saying, hey, I was thinking about life insurance. I wonder, do you have life insurance? Anything like that can just kind of slide something in a, I don't want to say innocent, but in a casual way. And then, one day you can just sit down and say, be honest and say, I have concerns. I'm thinking about when you get older. I want to make sure that I can give you the best care or what it is you want. I want to know what you want, not what I think you want. So can we start to look into those things?
Oh, that's wonderful. I love that approach. It goes back to when you want advice, ask for money, and when you want money, ask for advice. So in a
Yeah.
weird way, ask them for advice about you, and then you end up getting what you want out of the conversation. Now, I've been thinking about this. Do you have experience? And then turn it around. If somebody gets to the point where they've gone through the steps, now they have the plan, they're looking out for themselves, they have engaged with their parents, they've stepped into an active role where they can advocate for them. So it's a foundational building, as you can see what's going on.
Yeah.
What are some of the effective strategies that people can keep in mind when they are advocating for their aging parents' needs and preferences?
So a couple of things. Know that things will change.
Mhm.
You're going to have this wonderful plan and you think, I've got everything covered. And then something's going to happen and it's going to divert your plan. So just, having flexibility
Mhm.
in your plan to know you could go sideways, possibly. The other thing is to keep talking because somebody may say, I would not want to be on a ventilator. And you say that when you're 70.
Mhm.
Well, now you're 85 and you realize maybe I would. You have to keep asking, keep updating. Is anything different? Would you want, or it could be the opposite way. You know what? I wouldn't want a DNR. I just would like to, I would like a DNR. I would not want to be resuscitated. I said before I would, now I wouldn't. So it's always checking in and making sure that your plan is still the plan that you want to have going
Mhm.
on. And, checking in with the people who are part of that plan. Because I may say today, yeah, I can help or I can't help. And that again can change down the road. So it's just checking in over time, making sure that everything is in place as you would want it to be.
From the parent's perspective, One of the challenges that individuals oftentimes run into is that the individuals who are advocating on their behalf are not necessarily advocating for what the parent would want, but rather for what the caretaker thinks they should want. How do we address that dichotomy and that push and pull?
It's tough because the other thing is if you haven't had these conversations,
Mm-hmm.
you don't know. And it's very tough to ask somebody who is in the parent themselves who may be in a tenuous medical situation, what would you want? They can't answer. So then you have to try and get in their mind and think of what they want. It's tough. I know in my own family, my mother had COPD. She had emphysema.
Mm-hmm.
And doctor said to my father, do you want a DNR? And my father looked like a deer in the headlights. Like, what? What are you talking about? And I said, oh, it's okay. Here's mom's living will. I have it. I've got it. You don't have to make that decision. You don't have to worry. I have it.
And
And
for those
that's
that are
where,
listening that are unfamiliar, DNR is do not resuscitate. So in the event
yes,
something happened, do you want the
yes.
medical providers to step in?
So those are really important things. If you come to that situation, though, where you have not had the conversations, you don't have any other choice but to put yourself in that mindset. What happens invariably is you have more than one child, and one child wants to do one thing and the other child wants to do another. And there's, again, where there's conflict, which can be avoided if some of these conversations are talked about.
Mm-hmm.
You were talking about advocacy, and that is probably the most important role of the child for their parent once they get to a state where they can't speak for themselves. And sometimes we are afraid to advocate for one another, but that is the most important role you can have because nobody's perfect. Nobody knows how things are going to work out or what needs to be done. But asking questions, asking to have the best quality care, the best options. If somebody says, your parent, I don't know what's going to happen. Asking, well, what are the scenarios? I think being informed is probably the most important thing that we can do in any situation. And even if the news is not wonderful, at least you have that news. At
Mm-hmm.
least you can make decisions then from all of the angles that could happen and go forward that way.
That's exactly right. We have a product called the Estate Preparation Package that helps people organize their information. And one of the earliest steps is after you start the process, you have to tell your loved ones that this process has started and where they can find the information. Because if you know exactly what you want to have happen for you, even if you document everything, if it's not communicated to the individuals that need to have that information, it's as if that information doesn't exist at all. 100% agreed there.
Right. And if you have some kind of a file or something that has all of this information,
Mm-hmm.
because when situations happen, you don't know where to look. If you have what I call the red file, everything is in there. All of the information. Now, you can still have copies of wills with your lawyer and your accountant has information. They have all of that. But you have some of the basics so that if somebody should need it, even things like if you want to have certain funeral arrangements, if you've got it with your lawyer and I have to make funeral arrangements soon, and I have no idea that you have something with your lawyer. And then when they pull out your will and they're like, oh, well, this is, they want it to be cremated. Oh, all right. Didn't know that.
Yeah. It's a lot of information and agree with you there. You have to have it organized. Let's take a step in between two of the steps. So when you're advocating for parents as they go down that path, some have a quick and some have a longer drawn out. There's Alzheimer's disease, there's dementia that can come into play as well. What are the differences that caregivers can possibly hone in on without being a medical expert, obviously, that can help them identify some of the differences between Alzheimer's disease and dementia?
So let me explain the difference between Alzheimer's and dementia because people use them interchangeably,
Mm-hmm.
but they're subsets of each other. So how I explain it is it's the same as orange and fruit. Dementia is fruit. Alzheimer's is the orange. Alzheimer's is one kind of dementia. There are other kinds. And Alzheimer's is the dementia of sort of exclusion. Everything else is looked at If they don't find symptoms of anything else, it's Alzheimer's. So it's kind of an interesting thing. The other dementias have different symptoms to them. Frontal temporal, if you look at Bruce Willis, who is in that midst, unfortunately, for him, it's his speech, his ability to communicate was the first indication that something was going wrong.
That's aphasia, right?
Pardon?
He has aphasia,
He has
correct?
aphasia, yes. Yeah. Alzheimer's patients are speaking. It's more with Alzheimer's that there's lapses of memory, lapses of judgment. In the beginning, it could be repetition or knowing, and at the beginning, they know they don't know. And they're like, I know that. I know. And it's very frustrating for somebody with Alzheimer's in the beginning because they know they don't know. It's less frustrating for them as it progresses, but more frustrating for those around them. So if you see somebody who normally is very meticulous with time and appointments starting to forget or being late or whatever, one of the things for me is my father was driving and he phoned me and he said, I don't know where I am. 5 blocks from where he lives.
Wow.
So that was a huge indication. And he ended up very soon after that surrendering his license because he just knew this is not safe anymore. Those changes that occur, there's actually from the Alzheimer's Association, there's 10 warning signs that I suggest people make themselves familiar with because some things are subtle, some things are not as subtle. But it's really good information to have as the child of aging parents. And you hope that you never have to, refer to it. But there's so many resources out there that we're not even aware of that can help and make things easier. There's support groups for everything if you just go and look for them. Nobody has to do this alone. There's so much support out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. When it comes to support, if you're trying to get your family members and your siblings on board to help with caregiving responsibilities, what are some of your tips and tricks there that individuals can take? Because it oftentimes starts close to the nest and then expands outwards to organizations, to third-party groups, to others. So if people want to immediately go to their family members, what are some of the best steps they can do?
So sit down, and one of the first things, as I said earlier, that you have to look at is your finances. As a family, what can you afford or not afford? If you can afford to bring in outside care, that's one aspect of helping doing a care plan. But there are many people who do not have the financial resources to bring someone in. So then you're looking for community resources possibly, which is, as I said, could be your religious community, your friends and family, could be grandchildren, friends of your aging parents. There's other people out there that we don't always reach out to that can help, that the cost is not going to be a factor in those cases. There's also, when you're looking at long-term care, there are private care facilities and there are publicly funded facilities. And you have to look again at, can I afford a private care facility? Can I not? And if not, how can I make that experience the best? Can I go and investigate and find the best place for my loved one?
When does that process start?
I think when there are certain diagnoses, like if somebody is diagnosed with dementia of any kind, those are things when you have to just start, because you don't know with any of these kinds of dementia. It can be, I say to people, it can be, even, and then a quick drop. It can be a slow slope. It can be a plateau and a drop, a plateau and a drop. So the minute that you have some idea that there's going to be some health challenges, start looking for those things. I think as your parents start to get older, just be aware of what's out there. Not that you have to bring it in, but just there's, again, lots of information opportunities from insurance companies and healthcare companies and home care companies that are free, free lectures that it never hurts to go and be aware of what's out there. So,
I think typically a process that you involve the individual who will require the care in, Or is this something as a potential caregiver that people typically do on their own? So when the time comes, they're educated.
Yeah, I mean, you want to get as much information about any situation. You're never going to have everything. As I said,
Mhm.
I made lots of mistakes. And I have to admit that because,
Yeah.
I don't want anybody thinking, oh, well, she's, she knows what she's doing all the time. I didn't. And I learned through the not knowing what I would help other people to learn through my mistakes. And I think that that's a real honest and real thing that we do everywhere in life. We learn from our own mistakes to help others down the road.
Uh,
So,
And that's right. I mean, the reality is that you're unique just like everybody else. It's one of the lines that I oftentimes find myself repeating. And that means that your situation is going to be different. So you will always be learning something new, whether it's for you or others. But your expertise is far more experienced than most. What are some of those common mistakes that you see families or caregivers, experience and what can they do to avoid them? So let's
so
go on that list.
So one thing that I see is if people are told your loved one needs to be in not at home, in a residential situation.
Hmm.
And sometimes that is. I mean, if you have a parent or a loved one that has Alzheimer's and is violent, that's not a good situation to have at home. There are places that can help with that. Or if you are not, there isn't the support system for that person, but be really diligent in looking at any kind of outside care. Ask a lot of questions, look at accreditation, look at reviews, walk around these places and talk to the family members. That now I will tell you that the staff there doesn't really want you to do that in most cases. But I learned so much in talking to family members of people who are living in different places to see what is it like day to day? What is it like? And one of the things that I did as a family member when my parents were both in different facilities is I would sit down and talk to people and say, first of all, I'm coming as, this is my father who lives here, but also my background. And I want you to be really aware. And people would come to me and say, oh, they told me that my parents should move to assisted living. Okay, ask questions. Find out what the difference that they're going to get from going from independent living to assisted living and make sure you're in line with it. Make sure that when you have that care plan, that it's being executed because lots of times it is not being executed. And you have to go back and say, hey, my parents supposed to be taken to the toilet 3 times a day and I'm here and I don't see it happening. Can you check in on that for me? Again, it's that advocacy. That is the big, big, big deal that we need to do. And oversight.
Understood. All right. So, final takeaways for today. And Janice, it's been wonderful speaking with you. A wealth of expertise. What do you hope our listeners will take away from your insights on caregiving, successful aging, and end of life planning?
So, the name of my company is Talk About Aging.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really what I want people to do. It's not a taboo subject. It's not going to make anything happen any worse. But the more you talk about it, the easier it will be down the road. The more normalized it will be, the easier it will be to say, hey, what would you like? This is what I want. This is what I don't want. Having family members come together with a common goal, I think is really important. I also think about look at your own well-being. If
Mm-hmm.
you see that you are stressed and things are happening, take care of yourself, whatever that is. Get help. If you need to go to a therapist or somebody who is not directly involved, because that's what you need to do. Go and do it. If you're working for a company and they have an employee assistance program, use what is there for you so that you are at your best. It's important. And talk to people. It's okay to not be perfect and not have all the answers. That's why there's resources out there, and use those resources. And people want to be helpful. And yeah,
And if people want to find you, Janice, talk about aging, where do they go?
you can find me on talkaboutaging.com. Right now, I'm in the middle of redoing my website. It's so fun. And if you look at my website, it's quite senior oriented, but it is very soon going to be very children of aging parent oriented.
Right.
You can email me at janice@talkaboutaging. And if anybody would like a copy of that holiday checklist, let me know. I am more than happy to send you a PDF so that when you have a family visit, you've got that checklist to have a look at.
That's great. Maybe we'll include it in the show notes if that's okay with you as well. Yeah.
For sure. For sure.
All right. Janice, thank you so much for your time. We enjoyed the conversation, and that wraps up another Buried in Work podcast, where we feature tips and stories from industry professionals who specialize in making estate planning, end-of-life tasks, and estate transitions more manageable. If you enjoyed the podcast, please consider leaving a review, get in touch with Janice, say hello, follow us on social media, or visit us at the website buriedinwork.com. And don't forget, podcast listeners can save 10% off Buried in Work's estate preparation package and our games with the code BIW podcast. Janice, thanks again. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Adam.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Buried in Work podcast. Remember, you can save 10% on our estate preparation package and games with code podcast10 at buriedinwork.com.